We go to the Buppy's Catering Hotline. We're joined by Josh. What's up, buddy?
I'm just hanging out, David. I'm just waiting anxiously to see what the day brings and what our conversation brings. Because as you know, I like to have my week sort of revolve around this conversation. This is the Earth, this is the sun, and then every other day is just kind of the planets around it.
You know what I love about our combos, Josh, is sometimes I have an idea where I want to go, and then our conversation takes us different ways. It could be wrestling, it could be football, it can be a lot of different things.
Yeah, we were doing a sit down. We were scheduling a sit down with an unnamed head coach in a major conference. Let's just leave it at that. And the SID wanted to know, do you have any idea what you're going to ask? I said, no. They said, do you have a loose idea of where you're going to go? I said, also no. I don't even carry a piece of paper with me into these things. We're just going to kind of go wherever. If you're uncomfortable with that, we don't have to do it. And they said, no, just checking. And then they moved on. I think that was almost like a shock to the senses that you could interact with a human being without notes. Apparently people don't do that anymore, but it can happen.
Well, I'm going to allow Olin Buchanan then, who I know doesn't have notes, to ask the first. Well, you've got notes, but not for Josh.
Well, I didn't know he was going to be on the show till about a half an hour ago. Hey, Josh, of course, we always respect your opinion. And we were talking about earlier about teams that A&M is going to be facing in football next year, and how good or how challenged those teams will be. And I just want to tell me, if from top of your head, why is LSU, Auburn, Missouri,
Notre Dame,
Florida going to be better?
Let's see. Auburn, because they can't get worse in one-score games and turnovers. This would be the general consensus, is what I'm telling you. Notre Dame, I don't know that there's a thought they would be better. They just played in the national championship game. Who else? LSU, as you guys both know, anytime you return a quarterback, the entire world just assumes you get 20% better. Now, I don't want to sound hypocritical because I am pretty high on LSU this year. So I think I may fall in line with general consensus there, but Olin, it would not be for me simply because Garrett Nussmeier's back. I think they found themselves on the precipice of being in some pretty significant depth chart related issues, and they got after it in the portal pretty good. And I don't mean like Florida State last cycle where they brought in guys that could be good. I think they went and got some proven guys that could be really good. So I would say that about LSU. Who else did you throw at me there?
I said Missouri and Florida.
Missouri, they got the tailback out of ULM, I believe, to pair with the quarterback out of, I think it was Maryland or wherever. They're hoping, they're banking on transfer portal, and they're also banking on being Missouri, which, if you're unfamiliar with the SEC, means nobody pays attention to them this time of year. I mean, have you heard a single spring practice update from Columbia, Missouri? Of course you haven't. No one has. So they just kind of exist up there in isolation and then hope they've got a favorable schedule, which they do. And they all of a sudden are 6 weeks in and everyone's saying, ooh, you know who a sleeper is? Missouri. Missouri's a sleeper. But I don't know. There's so much variance, I guess, baked into the cake with every team you just listed. Maybe aside from LSU, who I'm pretty confident will be good, that I don't know. They could be 500 or 10-2.
Yeah, since you mentioned LSU, which you don't know this, I keep up with them a lot because my son goes there. He's a student there. Okay, I understand, they transfer portal receivers, everything, but what about that offensive line when you lose two guys at your tackles who are NFL player, maybe one's a first-round draft choice, maybe both, and I can't think of the other kid's name. He's a guard that did real well at the Senior Bowl.
Yep, I'd be terrified about it. In fact, I'd say 9 times out of 10, just as a college team in general, if that's you, if you just described me as a college team, I'd be terrified by it. The one thing I would say about LSU, because I've actually kept an eye on that, is I feel, I would say, fairly confident to very confident on the 0 to 10 scale that they've backfilled those positions.
Okay.
And it's not something in spring where they're trying to mix and match. They know the guys. Now, at this point, if the guys flame out, the guys flame out. But in a weird way, something that would terrify me most of the time does not have me as scared as it usually would. So I feel okay about them there.
Pate, I would say, and I usually go Josh. Josh, I would say Nuss is a completely different quarterback with pressure, as most people are, but we saw it here at Kyle Field. So, and that's with that great offensive line. So I even if they feel good backfilling it, I still think when he's got pressure, the first half Nuss against A&M and the second half Nuss, completely different players.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could describe many like that, but I think with him, it probably scales up a little bit more. So point taken there, which is why Olin just asked the question. I answered it confidently, but that's the thing. I'm looking at my phone right now. It says April 1st. You guys go through this every year just like I do, where you start to develop an opinion in your mind. All right, so for me, with LSU's offensive tackle situation, there will be nothing that happens between now and late August, aside from injury, that could change my mind on that because I won't see a game.
Okay.
So you'll go April, May, June, July. You'll go 5 months of saying something in your mind. Every time further down the rabbit hole you say it, you convince yourself more, even though there's been no more evidence.
Sure.
You didn't have anything else for 5 months, so you kept saying it. Then if they go to Clemson in week 1, and the first 2 series, Nuss is on his back 3 times, this is what's crazy about college football. 5 months of expectation just goes up in smoke and you feel so insecure about yourself. It's like what Florida State was as a team last year. That could happen with any aspect of a team.
Josh, I say that to you because we did this exact conversation a year ago about Notre Dame. And we were like, and then they lost one of their starting guys in training camp. I'm like, dude, our defensive line against that O-line, forget about it. And did A&M get 1 sack in that game?
They were credited with 1. It was generous.
Okay, so these conversations are just that. They're conversations until we get to September. We really don't know, right?
Yeah, and so that's what I had to tell Georgia folks last week. We were up in Athens, and they lost. I'm trying to think. It's a bunch of production off an offensive line that already was not great last year. So, they're mixing and matching. They hadn't been healthy on the offensive line this spring. And so I was doing a hit with one of their, I think it was in Atlanta, one of the radio stations there. And they were saying, how can we have any confidence? Yeah, we got Gunnar Stockton, new quarterback. How can we have any confidence that he'll be protected? And I said, well, you don't have certainty. But if you think just because you don't know the guys, or just because we say it's a weakness, that it is a weakness, that's incorrect. And I drew them right back to what you just did. I said last summer, every week, I remember talking about how, boy, that Notre Dame offensive line going into Kyle Field in week 1 against that front, that's the mismatch of week 1. That's where that game will tilt and fall on its ear in favor of A&M. And not only did the game play out the way it did, think about this, guys. Notre Dame had more injury on the offensive line during the season, and that O-line ends up being a strength. It ends up being something that gets them all the way to the national championship game, which just goes to show you there was a culture, there was like an identity about that position group that by the end of the season made me feel like I don't really care who they throw out there. I feel like they could throw David or Olin out there on the right side, and because they're throwing that Notre Dame jersey on, feels like a video game. They'll just magically play to a certain level, which is not the way it actually works, but that's the way it started to feel. It could also work in reverse, by the way.
I'm going to change course a little bit and talk about a different conference. I'm going to talk quarterback in the ACC. Now, Carson Beck. Look, when he had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers and a good offensive line, good running game, man, there people talking about him as a first-round draft choice. Is he that good, and what will he be like at Miami?
First off, I've got to know that he's healthy. He's not going through spring right now. So, they pointed out to me down there, well, neither did Cam Ward. Cam Ward didn't go through spring ball last year. Okay. So if you feel like you got another Cam Ward, I'm fine with you not going through spring. I would say Cam Ward is more an exception to the rule. Now, Carson Beck, he comes in, you got the shoulder surgery thing. He can stand alongside the offensive coordinator throughout spring ball. He can ingratiate himself with teammates. 2 things I wonder about. Number 1, commitment level. This is not me questioning it. This is me telling you I don't know, because I don't know Carson Beck. I've never spoken to him. The commitment level, the love for football, what it takes to pick up a system immediately, because guys, I don't know if you've looked at their schedule at Miami, it's very front loaded. They play Notre Dame in week 1. So it's very front loaded. So by week 4 or 5, they will have already played multiple losable games. So if he's not back, that's a whole nother can of worms. If he is back, if he is ready to go, I stopped short of saying it's doubt. I say it's a big question mark, only because I watched what you watched last year at Georgia. Certainly he was not in an ideal situation, but how erratic the play was week to week. I was at the Tennessee game, and he torched them. Could not have looked better. And then there were other times throughout the year, including against Texas, even in a win, where he had just egregious mistakes. And so at Georgia, you're in such a high-level operation that sometimes it can pick up the slack for you. Just collectively, it can pick up the slack for you. At Miami last year, they were totally quarterback-centric. If Cam Ward didn't get it done, they didn't get it done. So if they're relying on Carson Beck to be that, instead of elevating as a team around him, I've got big questions about that.
Josh, you got about a minute left. And it's probably not fair to even end it with this, but if you were to poke holes the way we did at LSU, what holes would you poke at A&M entering 2025?
Offensive consistency would be my number one question. And then also, what's the lasting image in our minds? Anyone's mind, not an A&M fan, anyone's mind, is Elko just constructively trashing the defensive effort at the end of last year. So I would say, actually, I would take that word. I would take the word consistency in performance, and I would say both sides of the ball. I don't doubt that the personnel is there. The minimum baseline of personnel is there to win 10-plus games. If the one possession games, the bounce stuff goes your way. But the consistency in performance, is it this right here or is it this right here? That, to me, is the difference in them in April.
I 100% agree, and I do think health, which is for every team, but Le'Veon Moss's health last year, I think, certainly derailed that offensive consistency, Josh.
Wish I had more time, because I really respect his opinion. Wish I had more time to talk college football with Josh Pate.
Well, that's why we get him weekly. Thanks to Academy
There we
Sports.
go.
But I'm not there.
You can come everyone. You want to
Okay,
stay?
I'll start coming.
All right, you stay next.
Because I want to know.
Tuesday.
I want to know what he thinks about the quarterback situation in the SEC overall.
Okay, so next
We'll get to
Tuesday
that.
he's going to stick around for the 9 o'clock session. All right.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate you, buddy.
See you guys.
See ya. Josh Pate here on TexAgs Live.